Oh! Sorry, you weren't supposed to see me doing that. My name is Dr. Catel. Welcome to Basic Nigerian History. Last episode, we learned about the Songhai Empire and the Kanem Bono Empire. This episode, we're going to learn about the Hausa Empire. Let's get started. Now, the Hausa Kingdoms. The Hausa Kingdoms were collections of states started by the Hausa people from the Niger River to the Lake Chad region. Kanem Bono was not included in the Hausa Kingdoms. Before the Hausa states were created, the Hausa people were under a matriarchal system, which meant they only had queens that devoted themselves solely to ruling. Hausa Kingdom have their own origin story, and the distribution of production and labor activities were actually based on the location and available resources. Now, let me tell you about the Hausa origin story. The legends talk about a man called Bayadijja. Now, Bayadijja came from far away. Most say that he was a prince in Baghdad, probably Prince Abu Yazid, and he arrived at Kanem Bono where he married a beautiful princess of the Kanem Bono Empire called Magaram. Now, there are different reasons as to why he came all the way to Kanem Bono, but it is agreed that this happened. He fled Kanem Bono with his now pregnant wife and ended up in the town of Hadija, where for some reason he left her in that town and she gave birth to his first son, Biram. Bayadijja then went on to a town called Gaya and commissioned a blacksmith to make him a sword or a knife. They never truly explain why he decided to leave his wife behind and go to Gaya and get a sword or a knife made. Nobody explains this, but it is the legend, so let's just keep continuing telling the story. Bayadijja ends up in Daura and he asks for water, only to find out that there's a great serpent called Saki who is stopping people in the town from getting water. Now, Saki means king in Hausa, so for all we know, this might have been referring to a king in that area that was evil. Bayadijja said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lift these people's oppression and allow them to use the water. So he goes to the well, kills the serpent and becomes a hero. The queen of Dura then offers the serpent slayer half of her kingdom to rule and gave him the name Bayadijja. Bayadijja means before he didn't understand, meaning that this person's name wasn't originally Bayadijja. We don't know what his real name was, but whatever his real name was, he didn't really understand their language, but now he understands. The hero turned down the offer to rule half of her kingdom and said, instead, can I have your hand in marriage? Now, you might be thinking, oh my God, what about his other wife? Well, I guess he didn't care that much about her. The queen of Daura wanted to marry him, but she was unable to marry because she was a queen, and queens don't marry. So she had to go through rituals to break a queenly vow in order to marry him. In the meantime, she said, okay, I'll give you a concubine. She gave him a concubine to keep him busy. The concubine was her sister, Bagawariya. Bayadijja then had a baby with her sister, Bagawariya, and gave birth to a boy called Kabagari. Kabagari in Hausa means town Caesar, or he snatched the town. The queen got worried that, oh my God, Bayadijja just had a baby with my sister, and this baby's name is called Town Caesar. Eventually, she had a baby boy of her own by Bayadijja and named him Bawo, which means takes it back. Meaning, Kabagari is a Town Caesar and Bawo takes it back. So you can see there's a tit for tat name going on there. Bawo's 6 sons and Biram are referred to as Hausa Bakwai, meaning the legitimate states. The legitimate states are Dura, GOBIR, Kano, Reno, Zaria, and Biram. Kabagari's 7 sons are the Banza Bakwai, meaning the illegitimate states, and those are Zamfara, Kebbi, Yauri, Gwari, Nupe, Kororofa, and Ilorin. Some scholars believe that this legend is based on a real historical figure, while others say he never really existed in the first place, and this is just a personification of a group of immigrants from far away. Personally, I think this might be a mixture of both, because it is hard to believe that all 3 men only gave birth to sons. Biram, being the son of a Kanem Bono mother, is useful as a tool to explain the empire's influence in that particular state. The Yoruba state of Ilorin, I don't think was actually a Hausa state, and neither was Nupe or Korofa, which belonged to the Junkum people. It sounds like a convenient way to explain their neighbors. At various times, the Hausa managed central control over their states, but it never lasted long. Each state was autonomous and had different specialities, but they all had a similar political structure and they all spoke Hausa. Kano and Reno were known as the chiefs of indigo, meaning they were responsible for growing, making, weaving, and dyeing cotton. Biram was the original seat of the government. Zaria was chief of slaves. Katsina and Daura were chiefs of markets. They were close to the trans-Saharan trade routes. GOBIR was the chief of war, responsible for protecting them from Mali and the Songhai Empire in the west. In the 11th century, a conquest began by Gejemasu of Kano led to the first united Hausa nation under the Queen Amina, Sultana of Zaria. During this period, rivalries between states led to periods of domination by major outside powers like Kanem Empire, Mali Empire, and Fulani. Islam spread into the Hausa states from traders from Mali and the Songhai Empire, as well as the Fulani people. There was some learning and literacy in order to practice the religion, but most of it only took place in the urban centers of trade and political authority. States regularly fought each other, and there was a constant yo-yo of power happening. In 1370, Ajayi of Kano became the first Hausa ruler to convert to Islam. Between then and the mid-17th century, conversions of Hausa states took place. Most Hausa states converted because it brought local and political advantages, connecting the Hausa land with the larger Islamic world. In the 14th century, the Fulani began to enter Hausa land in mass, coming from Senegal River through Mali and the Songhai Empire. The Fulani brought Islam and they brought trade with them. Some Fulani even settled in Hausa lands. They were racially indistinguishable and made themselves indispensable to the Hausa kings by becoming part of the devoutly religious and educated elite, taking high positions in the government. They had positions like advisors, Islamic judges, and teachers. Rulers and kings learnt only the basics of Islam, let's be honest. This is because they learned enough to keep political power and trade relationships alive with the larger Islamic world, but they often mixed it with pre-existing indigenous religious beliefs and practices in order to keep connecting with the masses of their subjects who weren't Muslims. Some successors even returned to the indigenous religions for spiritual guidance. The Bori cult of local spirits remained a central part of religious activity, as many outside of the trading and political centers weren't Muslims. Having said that though, some of the nobles took the religion quite seriously. In the 15th century, a king of Kano, King Umaru, abdicated the throne in order to pursue Islam in full. Now, the Hausa Kingdom and the Kanem Bono Empire both had vibrant trading centers, and they were both competing with each other, as well as the Mali Empire. The Hausa Kingdom exported things like slaves, leather, gold, cloth, kola nut, salt, animal hides, and henna. After the Mali and the Songhai Empire fell, the Hausa states became the main route for the trans-Saharan trade routes. This brought them even more money and wealth. No one state was able to dominate, but some states were more powerful than others. There were times when Kano would become the most powerful state and subjugate its neighbors Katsina and Zaria, and they would fight with Bono and Korofa, even deal with famine. But then there were also times when Kano and Katsina would proclaim peace in order to fight Korofa together, and then there would be times when GOBIR and Zamfara would attack Kano, and then there will be times when Kebbi will surface as the most important state and everybody will start attacking Kebbi. So it was a constant struggle for power. All the while, Islamic scholars who were usually Fulani continued to teach and advocate for reforms of the Hausa states, which they considered to still be mainly pagan and corrupt. In summary, the Hausa had connections as far west as Senegal and as far east as the Arabian Peninsula. Northerners, particularly Hausa people, came to settle in various societies where they traded in, creating little community pockets in those areas. The Hausa diaspora spread from east to west across the savannah, creating a wide commercial network beneficial to all Hausa people. The language also spread across Africa, and they were recognized throughout the savannah as the trading people. And in many places, their language became the language of commerce. They were basically everyone's middlemen. I think we're going to leave it there for today about the Hausa Kingdom. We'll come back and revisit the kingdom during the transatlantic slavery era. Next episode, we're going to learn about, only God knows, I don't know, you find out. Thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. Like I said, If you want to support us and help us continue make this great content for free, just make sure you visit our Patreon page. It's in the description below. You can go to www.patreon.com/RonuCreative. Pledge however much you can, share it with people, support us. We really appreciate it. We love you. Subscribe.